Okay, so although my app is working now, so as you can see, it's remembering me. If I open another browser here, if I go to localhost 370, and you'll see I'm getting my own counter. So it's using a session. But what I want to show you in this video is how to create a little login screen. So what I want to do is I want to store the counter against the user, and I want to use a factory function for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call that login.handlebars. So in this case I'm just going to say h1 login. So what we want to do here is I want to refresh this. So I'm going to create a new root here, the login root. So for the time being I'm going to have a get root. I'm going to do app.get, and I'm going to say /login, and then I'm going to say function, and then we're going to say request.response, and then what we're going to do for now is we're going to do res.render. So let's see, and we want to render the login screen, and we'll see now what that looks like. Control Z. If we go here, we go to login. Okay, so that's our login screen. It kind of looks okay. So now what I want to do in the login screen, I'm going to add a little form here. I'm going to say /login, and then I'm going to say method is going to be a post. Okay. The only thing we're going to do in our login screen is we're going to input a username, input text, we're going to give it a name, we're going to call it username. Okay, and then I'm going to do here input type, we can do that, and we're going to call it submit, and then we're going to give it a value of login. So what we want to do now is we want to log in, and then we want to link a username to each counter. Okay, so let's have a look. So at this point in time I'm just going to put in my name and I log in. Okay, nothing happens, so I don't have that login root. Okay, so I need to add a post root for my login, so I'm going to do that. So what I'll do here is I'll have login, change this here to post. Okay, so what we want to do now is once I logged in, we want to say, okay, at the time being we are just going to redirect to count. Okay, so I'm going to do that, redirect this to count. Is that the right thing to do? Now I'm going to redirect to the root. Okay, so if we do that, we're going to go here. So let's see if that works. I'm going to go back, I'm going to put that there, login. Okay, that takes me to my count. So the thing at the moment, the login is working, although we're not doing anything with a name. So what we're going to do now is we want to make sure that the username has been entered. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say request.body.username. So then what I'm going to say, if the username is there, I want to put that into the session. Then I'm going to say rec.session.username. I want to put the body that's been entered, the username that's in from the form that sits in request.body. I want to put that into the session. So now we do that, and then once I've done that, I actually want to redirect to the root, else if it's blank I want to redirect back to login. Okay, so let's see if that will do the trick for us. So if we go here, we redirect back to login. Okay, so let's have a look. if that worked. So we're going to go back here to login. If I don't put anything, rec.redirect, that should be request, that should be response.redirect. Let's refresh that, resend. Okay, see now if I don't put anything, I'm coming back to the same screen. If I put my username in there, you see I'm coming back to my login screen. Okay, so now I have my username. So the thing we can do now is at this point in time, in my post route, okay, we have this code from the previous video here. So what we want to change now is we want to change the way our factory function works. Okay, my factory function, what I want to do is I want to create the ability so that I can get a counter for each person that's been logged in. So let's see how I can change that. So what I want to do now is, in fact, I'm going to leave my counter the way it is, and I'm going to create a new factory function here. So that's wrapping that one. So I am going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this one user counter.js. I'm going to create a function here. I'm going to call it user counter. So I'm creating a new factory function, and in this factory function I'm going to have a map. I'm going to call it user counters. This will store all the counters for all the different users, and then what I will have is I will have a get counter map, and what this will do, this will take the username and it will get a counter for that user, and it will return get counter. Okay, so that's our factory function. And then what I want to do is at this point in time, the only thing that I want is I basically want to say user counters username. So I want to say here, if it doesn't exist, if there's no counter for the current user, the thing we're going to be doing is we're going to create a counter for that user. So we're going to say user counters, and we're going to say user name, and we're going to say counter. Okay, so what we need to do now, we will need to import that counter into here. So we will need to say here const counter equal require, and we're going to do counter here. So I'm creating a factory function that will give each user its own counter. So let's have a look. So now I have this factory function I'll call user counter. I have counter here. I ask for a counter here, and then if I don't have a counter, I'm going to create you one, and then otherwise you're going to ask me again, and then I'm going to return the counter from the function, and basically meaning you always will have a factory function for the specific user. Again, it's important to realize that this will still do all the things we have in here. These functions will have an increase, decrease value here. All that this function will do, it will basically allows us to store all the factory functions. Module.export, so I'm making this a node module. I'm putting this over here. So now I have my counter over here. So now what I can do, so let's have a look. So now in the past what we have, if we go to index.js, now we need to import user counter here, user counter. So we're going to change this, we're going to say user counter, we're going to have this over here, and then I'm going to create a global instance of user counter. So I'm going to say const user counter equal user counter. Okay, so now I have this. So what we have now from before is we had our username, okay, which is stored in the session. Okay, so what we can do now is we can go to, so now we don't need all of this code anymore. All that we need is we would need to go to user counter and we say get counter, and for us to get the counter we need to request.session user name. So, and then now what we're going to get back now is we should get back the appropriate counter. Okay, from that factory function it should look it up for us based on the value in the session. So let's see, so now I don't even need these anymore, so let's have a look. Okay, counter, still get the action from the form, don't even need to do this now anymore because all my new values should be stored. So let's see if this will do the trick. So let's go and run this, Control R. So the important part here now, so I need to start from the beginning, make sure that I have my username. Okay, I'm coming here, increase, counter is not defined. Okay, index JS line 63. Okay, what's the problem? Oh, I didn't save. That's always great if you've done something like that. Okay, so you come back here. So if we go back to this, we log in, increase. Oh, something is not working. Okay, so let's see where that problem is coming from. Increase. So let's just see counter. Okay, so now let's see why that is. Again, so let's just see counter.increase. Let me just go back. I think the problem might actually be in our get root where we're displaying the values, because we are not reading the values back from. Okay, so what we need to do is we actually need this code. Okay, because now we're no longer using request.session.value. You actually need to get the factory function in the get root as well for the currently logged in user. And then what we want to say is we want to say counter dot what did we call it in our counter? I think it's called value. Okay, so now we just need to say counter dot value. Okay, so let's have a look. So I'm reading, sending username in, I'm getting my counter back. That's working. So let's just say, let's refresh. Okay, so let's just go back here to login. So I'm logging in here. So increase, still not. Okay, so let's see where the problem is. Okay, so the problem is here, request.session.value. That thing is no longer in the session. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I am just going to put this out here. I'm going to do that. So one issue we have here now that I'm going to float by. We're going to say log in here, give it a username. Doesn't matter what it is at this stage. Increase. Okay, now it's working. Decrease. Okay, and we can increase. Let's see if it's working in the browser as well. Refresh. Okay, so the important part here is login. We're going to do a mail in here, so you just log in. So, okay, you can see I can actually log in somewhere else now, and I can get the same instance of the counter, okay, which is interesting. So now what I can do is I can say login. If I log in as something else, I'll say Joe Blogs. So now it gets its own counter. Okay, so now you can see refresh here. Okay, you can see the counter stays unique to its own. It's going to be a small issue now. If I were to restart the server, you will see if I log in and I go to this screen, okay, let's see if I increase. Okay, so at the moment, if I don't log in, it will actually use a blank username. So what I want to do is just to make sure when I'm getting here that I have a username. Okay, so I just want to come here and I want to say if request.session.username is not set, I just want us to, it should force us to log in. So I'm gonna say res dot redirect to the login screen. Okay, let's have a look. Control R. Okay, if I'm going to this screen now and there's no user, it's forcing me to log in, which I think is great. The other thing that I want is I want to put the username onto the screen and we see who we're working with. So I'm going to say here counter dot, let's just see, are we currently storing? Yeah, we can use, because the username sits where? It sits in the session. Okay, request dot session dot username, and what I'm going to do now is I am going to put that onto the screen as well. So I'm going to go to my index.handlebars and I'm going to just add a small thing. I'm going to take this other code away. Just a hi. In fact, I'll put that in a little div and I'll say hi. You see who we're working with here, and then we're going to put this there, user name. So if you say refresh, okay, so if I go there now, see there's my username. You can make it a bit smarter CSS wise. So if I am going to another screen and I refresh over here, you see there's no user. If I'm trying to go to that root now, it's going to tell me no, you can't go there. So if I go here, say Andre, okay, so that will work. Okay, so if I increase, that will basically be it. So a small thing I want to do is logging out. Easiest way to log out at the moment is just to remove the username from the session. So what I will do for now is I will create a little post root that will do that. We don't want to do those kind of things in a get root really, because yeah, then we can call it by mistake. So in this case I want to do log in, log out. Okay, and then the way I'm logging out is if we're doing a few things. Okay, we basically want to say request.session.username, we wanna set it to null. Okay, might be the other thing we actually want to do in our first. So let's see if we do that, whether that works. Once we logged here, we want to redirect to log in. Okay, and then what I want is on my index screen, I'm going to have another form here. So let's see, we have form here, form post. I'm going to call this log out, and then we just need a button here, input type, input submit. We're going to call it log out. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Refresh. Okay, so now I'm coming back in here, log in. Okay, log out, it takes me back. Okay, which is great. Okay, so a vermilion. Okay, let's do there. So if I come back here, you'll see I'm actually logged in. If I click on the logout button, I come back here, I go back, you see I'm still logged out. Okay, so you can see that my logout is working. So let's see, one thing it's currently doing, it should keep my counter. So if I log out and I say come back in, my counter should be at 9, which it is. Okay, so it's keeping my state. Okay, the important thing here is we've added this factory function that is called user counter. All that it does, it keeps a counter factory function for each username, and we instantiate that in our server user counter here, and then I store my username in the session, which gets in there via my login screen. Do this over here. If a user do that, if a user is not there, I redirect back to login. And then the other important thing we have done is in our get root, where we display here, we are checking if the username is there, and then we redirect to login. There's other ways of doing this using middleware, but for the time being we'll just use it like this to make sure you can't get to this screen if you don't have a username. So that is a simple and easy way of actually giving users access to the app. Going forward, what might happen is that your user counter factory function might be connected to the database. You won't just store it in the instance, because what's happening at the moment is once our app is done, all the data is gone, but the same principle will apply from there. So I hope you found this useful, and it should give you a little bit of introduction of how to use sessions in your application.